Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode from our podcast, Land Talks. Today, we have very special guest, Willem Ferwerda. Welcome, Willem, to our podcast.
Thank you very much.
We are so happy to have you today, and we will be more happier if you just introduce yourself to our audience.
Okay, thank you very much, Somaya. It's lovely to be here. And yeah, my name is, as you said, Willem Ferwerda. Quite often people pronounce it wrongly, but you pronounce it very well.
Thank you.
And yeah, I'm the founder of Commonland, which is an organization that is doing large-scale landscape restoration in several countries, especially using an approach called the Four Returns Framework for Landscape Restoration or Healthy Landscapes. That was developed through translating the ecosystem approach that was already endorsed by COP5 of the Biodiversity Convention 24 years ago in a more practical way. And I can explain a little bit more about it. My background is I'm an ecologist, a tropical ecologist. I've been working with IUCN for 17 years, also as a director of the IUCN office in the Netherlands for 12 years, and have been working mostly abroad in the tropics, but now based in the Netherlands, and our office is based in Amsterdam.
Thank you so much. Let's talk a little bit about sustainability in land restoration. In your opinion, what is the key ingredient that ensures land restoration efforts are sustainable over the long term?
Oh, that's a tough question, but I think maybe the most important thing is that we need to work with people. Land degradation or land restoration can be done. We know the technicalities from the ecosystem perspective, the ecological side, we understand it pretty well. But how to align stakeholders in those landscapes to work on these issues for decades, because this is a thing that we need to do for decades at least. It really depends on the growth season of plants, on the geophysical conditions, the weather conditions, and all these things to restore large chunks of land.
Yes.
But that's why people, the entry point.
Of course, I think it's not just you who emphasize on people that should be there all the way. We might have the curriculum, we might have everything, but we need the input of people, especially local people. They can relate to everything.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. They are there and they want to stay in those places. Like we all want to live in the places where we came from quite often. And it is critical that we move onto a quest where we help people to achieve the restoration or landscape management purposes on the long run. So time is another issue.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. So let's move to another topic, which is the holistic approach to restoration.
Yes.
What does it mean to take a holistic approach to land restoration, and how do you incorporate this into your work?
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, that's basically the work we are doing.
Yes.
So when I left IUCN in 2012, I was very much inspired for many years by the ecosystem approach. And you can look it up in Google. It is a wonderful approach based on 12 holistic principles. And it was endorsed by the UN many years ago. However, it was theoretical. No one was using it. So for me, it was the question, how can I create a narrative that is practical and that gets the buy-in of almost all stakeholders, whether they are on landscapes living, indigenous people, local farmers,
Yes.
etc., or whether they are based in big corporates or with governments or the finance industry. And I did a quest for a year in 2012, interviewing farmers and the finance industry people in cities like New York and Frankfurt and London. And I went out to poor farmers and wealthy farmers all over the place, and conservationists and indigenous people. And I realized by interviewing them that there were 3 words that were resonating to all those groups. And it sounds simple, but actually it took me a while to understand it. And those 3 words are losses, risks, and returns. So losses is not only financial loss, it is
Yes.
also social loss. It can be associated to grief. It can be associated to community losses, villages that disappear because of land degradation. It can be associated to economic income losses or losing your job. So it is a very generic but very important word, and it touches the heart as well as the head, which is important. If you want to bring things back, you want to bring the village back, or you want to move away from your grief process and restore your inner purpose, you need to talk about returns. It is not only about ROI, return of investment, which is the normal way of thinking, financial returns, but we also need to think about how do you return your spirituality, your inspiration. So I included losses and returns in a landscape restoration approach, because if you work on returns in an integrated, holistic way, your risks will go down. Your social risk will go down because you create a community, but also the environmental risk will go down. Less floods, better absorption capacity of the soil because of vegetation cover and so on. And that means that at the end also the risk for investors will go down. And if we see all the heavy weather events happening all over the place now in the world, who is paying for those risks? Insurance companies, all those things we need to think about.
Yes.
So basically what I realize is that a degraded landscape is characterized by 4 losses. The first loss is purpose. People are leaving the area.
Yes.
They have lost their pride and hope. The second loss is jobs and community. They have lost their community and sense of community because the villages are gone. And the third loss is biodiversity, soil health, water, all the physical elements that you find in the degraded landscape.
Makes very
And
sense.
the fourth loss is income, financial.
Of course.
So if you have 4 losses characterized by a degraded landscape, and then look into what are the most important characteristics of a restored landscape, you need to return inspiration, number 1. You need to return the social capital. You need to return communities. That's the second one. The third one is you need to return biodiversity, soil health, all those things, the water absorption capacity, tree planting, whatever you call it. The biophysical element is, you need to return that,
yes.
which is the life support system of everything. And the fourth one is, if you do that well, if you bring back those 3 returns, you will get new regenerative companies and investment opportunities for a healthy landscape. So that's the return of financial income. So 4 losses, moving that to 4 returns, you create, a livable landscape. But that takes time, and that's why we need to have at least 20 years to do that, minimum 20 years, which is another component of the framework. And the last component is where to do what. How can you help people to understand what a landscape is? We identify that you need to have a landscape, you need to have a balance within a landscape of 3 zones. You need to have a nature zone,
Yes.
where you have nature flourishing, which is the importance, for each landscape. You need to have an economic zone where you live, an urban area where you have process and plants to process stuff and products. And you need to have what we call a combined zone. Before we call that an agricultural area, but we call it a zone where you combine agriculture or land use with biodiversity. So you create large zones of regenerative agriculture, reforestation, whatever you call it, but this is the place where nature and productivity, food productivity, fiber productivity, water productivity is combined with each other. And if people understand where to do what in those large landscapes, you can move forward. So this is what we have called the 4 returns framework for holistic landscape restoration and management.
Wow. Very sophisticated, but very simple as well. You have put it in a very simple way, so I understood it. Thank you so much.
Most welcome.
Thank you. So let me ask you, what kind of mindset shift is needed to achieve the transformative changes you envision in land restoration? I mean, how can we encourage and implement this shift on a global scale?
I think, first of all, by doing it. I mean, then you create mindsets of people on the ground. They see the difference before it was and, after 10 or 15 years by doing it. And there are examples in the world where you have these processes already, like the Loess Plateau in China, the work after the Dust Belt in the 30s in the United States. But I think the mind shift is that we all, and I mean we, with all people on the ground as well as investors and companies, need to understand that this is the new upcoming industry. We call it the holistic landscape restoration industry. I recently wrote an article in Forbes about it. And if we're going to see it as an industry, which means scale, replicability, income, return on investment based on a blended thinking, blended financial system, we will see that this is probably the most important industry that we will face for the coming century. And why is that? Because if you look at what's happening now with all the floods and the disasters, droughts and so on, due to climate change and landscape degradation, we know that we can alter this process. We have the capabilities, we have the understanding, we have even the financial means to do it. But we can only envision it if we are going to see it as an industry, as a new way of working together to bring down the risks, because this is all part of bringing down the risks for people and the economics and the economy of our planet. Because we can't go to another planet at this
Can't
moment.
we?
Maybe one person thinks about that, but
Yeah,
most persons don't think about it.
of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the mind shift. That is the transformational process that we want to promote and want to prove that is possible with the projects that we are now currently doing using this framework over the last 11 years.
Brilliant. Okay, let me ask you regarding scaling global collaboration. How can we create a common language system of measurement or shared framework to track and scale land restoration progress effectively across the world?
Yes. Now, I mean, as I said, my intention when I started this thinking and using the four returns framework was, can we indeed create a narrative that is commonly used by everyone, industry, governments, as well as local actors? That was the first ambition, and I first wanted to show that it was possible. So that's when I founded Commonland as an entity, just to make sure that we can work on the ground doing this. So we started in Spain, Australia, in South Africa, in India, even in our tiny country, the Netherlands, which is a degraded country. It's not a drought country, but it's a degraded from a biodiversity point of view. So what we've seen now is that this narrative is widely accepted. And not only by those actors on the ground, but as I explained, what we did is we made the complexity of a landscape and landscape degradation tangible by using different words, but still with key performance indicators under those returns of impact. So our hope is that this narrative, this framework or similar frameworks will become, you could say, the Intel inside of this restoration industry. And that means that we can work on scaling because it's replicable. You can do it in many areas. There are, of course, barriers, and our current economic system that is not valuing land or biodiversity is one of those barriers. But increasingly, because risks are increasing and the cost associated to those risks, I'm pretty optimistic about that this will change rapidly the coming years. It will change fast.
Yeah,
So
I love to be optimistic as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You know the
Hope is
definition of
good.
an optimist. My definition of an optimist is
Please, please let
an
me know.
optimist is a well-informed pessimist,
Oh, brilliant.
especially well-informed about the ecological resilience of our planet.
Very well rephrased. Okay, my final question for you, Willem. From your experience, what is one universal truth about land restoration?
Oh, that is a beautiful question. No one have
thank you.
asked me for. I think the universal truth is that we have experienced that we are part of nature as people.
Yes.
And because we are part of nature, and land is part of us. And the reflection of a degraded landscape is, you could say, the reflection of pain and degradation within our inner system, within our inner purpose. So it's a degraded landscape. It acts as a mirror of our inner trauma. And the beautiful thing is, and that's why this is universal, because it does not depend on culture. Every culture, every religion has that same deeper understanding that we are part of a bigger thing. Because land degradation is challenging this bigger thing,
Yes.
or mystical, beautiful, universal thing. That means that land restoration is going to the heart first, because it gives hope and it triggers our spiritual being to move further and start doing it. So the beautiful thing is, and that is the universal wisdom behind this, that landscape restoration is also a spiritual quest that we need to take forward. And it does not depend on whatever religion you're part of. It
Of
is a
course.
universal thing.
Of course.
And that's why I'm very hopeful that human beings will take up this challenge for the coming decades and centuries, because it brings us together. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Willem Ferwerda. I'm so happy to have you today, and I don't want this conversation to end, but sadly we came to the end of our episode today. I would like to thank you so much for being with us today, and for our audience, please stay tuned for more and more episodes from our podcast, Land Talks. Thank you so much, and goodbye.